Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful week. If you are new here, my name is Lizzie and I talk about all things pretty, pink, and feminine. I also have a blog, lizzieandlace.com, and a pretty pink Instagram at lizzieandlace. If you love all of those things, please feel free to follow along over there and subscribe to my channel below. Today, I am not talking about any of those things. I am actually sharing a story time about the time that I was scammed by a school. This is a true story. I have never shared these details with anyone aside from my husband, but a lot of you showed interest in this and I thought that it might be something very useful to share. This might be a long video, so I will leave chapters below if that interests you in any way. So this situation happened in 2007, 2008, so it's been quite a few years. Recently, as in a few months ago, I saw some articles about students that attended for-profit colleges and how they actually got their loans taken care of. This situation was very similar to mine. However, my school was not on the list. I did not get my loans taken care of, and I will talk more about that later on in the video. A lot of feelings kind of came to the surface because I kept this hidden for quite a while. This is not something that I ever thought I would share. When we hear about these situations where people get scammed in one way or another, I think that we think to ourselves that it can never be us. We would never put ourselves in that situation because we know better. We are smart enough to know when something is a scam. But at the same time, I think that anyone could be in this situation. On this channel, I also shared my story about LuLaRoe and how I was a consultant, and the circumstances for both are actually very similar. I do think that me getting myself into these situations had a lot to do with my mindset and my circumstances and things like that, and just how vulnerable I was to be put in that situation. But at the same time, I see a lot of similarities in the higher-ups and how they take advantage of these types of people. I never thought I would be the kind of person to fall for anything like this, but I did, and it was honestly one of the worst experiences of my life, and this is why I have never shared it with anyone. When it comes to making any decision, I am more on the cautious side. I read so many reviews, I look at every possible scenario about the outcome, and I do extensive research, and I did that in this situation too, and I still was scammed. And with no red flags, it was much easier for me to make a decision. I want to share my story because I know that there are so many others out there that have been in a similar circumstance that are so embarrassed and that feel alone and feel like they did so much and now they have nothing to show for it. People are ashamed and they have been put in dire financial situations, and honestly, it's not fair. It is not fair that people get treated this way. And if you have been through something similar, I want you to know that you are not alone. It has nothing to do with your intelligence or anything like that, regardless of what people say. There are some people out there that just prey on others, and I think it is absolutely disgusting. Thankfully, most people have caught on over the years, and the scamming of these for-profit colleges has decreased. But whether it's a school or something else, I hope that my story serves as a warning for some and an inspiration for others. So first things first, I'm going to give you a little bit of background because I think that it's really important for you to understand how I got myself in this situation in the first place. When it comes to choosing a career, some people don't know what they want to be when they grow up, but I always did. It was always ingrained in my mind that I had a purpose. There was no plan B. I was stubborn, determined, and desperate. to make this work. I come from an extremely modest background, and I grew up in a very, very small town. Fashion design was always something that I felt was my purpose, even from a young age. I have been an artist since I was very young. When I was really, really young, I learned how to sew by hand. And so I would sketch out items of clothing and I would create those for my dolls, for my Barbies, for my Beanie Babies, for myself. However, growing up, I didn't have much of a say of what I would wear fashion-wise. Clothes were pretty much bought for me, and I didn't feel like they really represented who I was and what my style was. And so in high school, I started babysitting, and I would save up all of my money and go buy clothes off of the clearance rack at the mall. And people would always compliment me on my outfits, and it made me feel really good, especially since I wasn't spending a lot of money on it. And people would also ask me for style advice, and it made me feel amazing because my passion for fashion never came from a place of vanity. It was always wanting to help people and wanting to express myself and really pursue something that I was passionate about. So fast forward to later on in high school. At the time, SAT scores were mandatory to get into a four-year college. And although I had a nearly perfect GPA and I graduated with honors at the top of my class, I actually opted out of taking the SAT due to financial reasons. I share this because ultimately this decision was instrumental in where I ultimately ended up. Regarding college, without an SAT score at this time, my only option was to go to a junior college and then transfer to a four-year if I chose to. And I was totally okay with this. I felt that it gave me some time to ease into college, and financially it made a lot more sense to me. I felt like I wasn't really missing much because the first 2 years you're basically doing the same thing regardless of where you go. I should also note that growing up, I had the mentality that college was everything. And in order to be successful and to get to where I wanted to go, I absolutely had to go to college. I didn't have the finances or the connections or anything else. It was literally, in my mind, the only thing that would change my life. I also wanted to be the first person in my family to graduate from a four-year college. I know that things have changed quite a bit since then regarding college and regarding me personally, but that's where I was at this point in my life. So after high school, I enrolled in the local junior college, and I went for a year before we moved due to my parents' divorce. When I moved, things got really crazy. And this was probably the toughest time in my entire life. I was suddenly forced to live on my own, and in order to survive, I had to work 3 to 4 jobs at a time, and I was still going to school full-time. Looking back, I have no idea how I did all of this, but school was very, very important to me. I was even told by one of my jobs that I needed to drop out of school in order to keep working there at the pace that I was. And I did not want to do that because I did not want to give up my dream. My living circumstances during this time were up in the air. There were many times where I had no idea where I was going to live, and it was really tough. And I was just at such a low point in my life. It felt like things were never going to get better, and that everything I did, it wasn't working in the way that I thought it would. I thought that by me getting good grades and wanting to go to college and chasing after my passion, I thought that I was doing everything right, and yet I was thrown with all of these situations that were out of my control, and they were very, very hard, and they weighed on me heavily, mentally, emotionally, financially, pretty much in every way that you can think of. But I kept moving forward. I stayed positive somehow, and I stayed in school. And I made it all work, and I got through it. And looking back, I am so proud that I got through that situation Sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional, but it was very tough. And I am so, so proud of myself for going through that and not giving up. So I finally finished up my 2-year degree and I was looking at 4-year universities. I found that many 4-year colleges in my state did not have a fashion program. The ones that had a program of this type were either in the Los Angeles area or they were out of state in New York or along the East Coast. And I was located in the middle of nowhere, so I was thinking at this point that in order to even pursue this dream, I would have to move away. Also, at this time, it was a very interesting time for transferring students and also freshman students going into college. Acceptance was very, very difficult, and only a very small percentage was being accepted, especially for transfer students. I applied to one school that was about 3 hours away, and this was the closest school to me that had a fashion program. While I waited to hear back, I researched other art schools in the area, including FIDM and Otis, which is a very prestigious art school on the West Coast. I also looked at the Savannah College of Art and Design and Parsons and FIT in New York. However, I quickly came back to reality when I realized that moving out of state, let alone across the country, would not be financially feasible for me. And although I had no idea how I would get to these schools in LA, it was a much more realistic option. So I applied to both FIDM and Otis and I got accepted. The thing with art schools is that they are very expensive. I'm talking 6 figures expensive. Why an art school has to cost that much, I have no idea, but they all do. I was drawn to the art schools in particular because I felt that it would give me more freedom creatively and that it would teach me more of the skills that I needed, and that there were more networking opportunities available rather than going to a state school that had a program. This was before all of the social media that we have today. This was before I started my blog. It was a completely different time. In my mind, those connections are how I would break into the industry, and a lot of these schools used that as a selling point. However, at the time, FIDM only offered an associate's degree in fashion design, and since I already had my associate's degree, I was looking for a program that offered a bachelor's degree, and they were very hard to come by in the fashion design field. Otis looked very promising because they did offer a bachelor's degree in fashion design, but even after all of my financial aid, I would still have to take out extensive loans. And since I didn't have a lot financial-wise, loans terrified me. And I didn't want to put myself in a position to where I was in massive debt, especially at the beginning of my adult life. By this time, I had finally heard back from the 4-year university that I applied for, and I got in. And let me tell you, it was so difficult to get in. It was just a crazy time, and I got in and I was so excited, and then I came back to earth because I was thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? I do not have money to move down there. And so I thought to myself that I was just going to drive down there every single day, make the 3-hour drive there and back every day for my classes. That is how much I wanted this. This is how much I wanted to achieve my dreams and pursue my passion. When I thought about the logistics, it just didn't make any sense. It wasn't realistic, especially since I still needed to work in order to pay my bills. So I decided not to go. I had no idea what I was going to do, but then shortly after that, my cousins told me that a school had just opened up near them in Sacramento, and it was called IADT, the International Academy of Design and Technology. They lived in the area, so that made me feel more comfortable with such a big move. This would have been pretty far from my home, and I was happy that I had an option to where I had people nearby just in case I needed anything, and so I wouldn't feel so alone in my first big move. I did a lot of research for quite a while and I didn't find anything out of the ordinary. In fact, I found really good reviews from their sister campuses, and this was a new campus, so of course it didn't have any reviews yet from any students. It sounded amazing, plus they had a bachelor's degree in fashion design, which is exactly what I was looking for. Everything looked promising, and keep in mind that for-profit colleges were very, very popular during this time. There were so many of them, and nobody batted an eye. Nobody was worried about being scammed or anything like that. It just wasn't really anything that was talked about. So I decided to make the drive up north to visit the school, tour the campus, and meet with the girl that they had set me up with to be a roommate. During this time, I asked so many questions, and I didn't feel like there was anything going on out of the ordinary. I didn't feel like anything was wrong. There were no red flags whatsoever. They told me that they were very selective with who they accepted into the school, and that they only accepted the most promising and talented students. They told me that their staff was full of industry professionals that were in the field. They were fashion designers and others who were well known in the industry, and that they were fully qualified to teach. They did not, however, give me any names of any of these teachers, so I could not check them out for myself, but I trusted her. I also asked her about transferring. I told her that eventually I might be interested in getting a master's degree, and she said that I would have no issues whatsoever transferring my classes or attaining a higher degree, and she assured me that they were fully accredited. She also promised job placement after graduation and mentioned a program where if you maintained a 4.0 grade point average, that they would cover your books and part of your tuition. So I was sold on that because I was all about saving as much money as I could and taking as little loans out as possible. I brought in this huge portfolio full of all of my art, and she did not even take a look at it. I remember paying $50, taking a basic assessment, and just like that, I had been accepted. And when I say accepted, I mean like immediately, like right then, I was accepted. And I found that a little strange, but I didn't say anything. So then after that, it was time to apply for my loans, and they gave me a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. I also did not need a cosigner for these loans, which I thought was very strange because although I had good credit, I did not have an extensive credit history. It was very, very, very small because, as I said, I was just beginning my adult life, so I didn't have much of a credit history at all, but somehow I got immediately approved for these loans. Then they set up my roommate and I in an apartment nearby, just down the street from the campus, and upon running my credit for this apartment, I found out that my credit score was actually very, very low. I was so confused because I had always made my payments on time and I couldn't understand why it was so low, but I found out that an accident from a year earlier went on my credit instead of workers' comp. I had fallen down a flight of stairs at work, and they sent me a bill instead of sending the bill to my place of employment at the time. And since I had been moving around so much, I never saw this, and so it was way, way past due, and I had no idea about it until they ran my credit. Needless to say, for the apartment, I did need a cosigner. Shortly after that, I met my husband, and we started dating 6 weeks before I moved away. But everything had already been set in stone, and I still made the move, and we had a long-distance relationship. January of 2008, I made the big move, and at first I really loved my classes because I love anything artistic and creative, and getting to learn more about the things that I'm passionate about. And I really liked the instructors. I thought they were great. I was just so happy to finally be in a place to where I was pursuing my passion. But after a few months, things took a turn and my eyes started to open to what was really going on. My favorite professor would often use my work as an example for the other students, and at first I was completely flattered and excited that she loved my work and would choose to do that. But after a while, it continued to happen, and I thought it was really strange that she continued to share my work as much as she was. So I began to look at the other students' work and see how it compared. I just want to say that art and talent in general is very subjective, and I don't want to dismiss anyone's talent in any area ever. At the same time, I feel like when you are at an art school, it's implied that you have an interest in art or some type of talent in that area. And we were not learning these skills in the classes that I was taking. However, there were a lot of obvious signs that many of these students were not natural artists. I was really confused, so I started to do some digging. I asked my advisor, who was the same person that I initially spoke with when I came to the school, and she is the one that did not look at my portfolio, but just took my $50 and gave me an assessment test. She finally came clean and told me that they accept anyone that applies as long as they are able to pay for the school. As long as the financial aid goes through, then those students are accepted, and it is not based on talent or skill or even an interest in what they're doing. It is 100% based on money. I felt so sick to my stomach because she had lied to my face. She had lied to get me into this school, and I was worried about whether or not my education would be valid. I thought that I was being accepted on different terms and not because I had the financial aid to pay for it. But I didn't ask her any questions at this time, and I just decided to keep going. So here is where it gets a little weird. I can't remember exactly who it was because it's been so long, but I think that the professor that always used my work as an example was the one that said this to me. She came up to me after class one day and asked me why I was there. She told me that I didn't belong at that school. At first, I was a little taken aback because I felt that I deserved to be at a place where I could achieve my dreams, and I didn't realize that she meant something else. She mentioned that there was so much more going on behind the scenes at the school that I didn't know about, and that I had too much talent to be there, and that she thought I had what it took to go far in my career and be successful, but that it would not be through that program. I asked her if she could elaborate on this because I really wasn't understanding what was going on, and she said that she couldn't tell me any more than that and that I need to start doing some research myself, and so I did. I found out that IADT, the International Academy of Design and Technology, was owned by CEC, Career Education Corporation, and they owned a number of for-profit colleges, including Brooks Institute, Le Cordon Bleu, the California Culinary Institute, Sanford Brown, American Intercontinental University, and so much more. I found out that the instructors were indeed not qualified to be teaching what they were teaching. Some did not even have the proper credentials to even be a teacher. Students would do the bare minimum or be absent for weeks at a time and somehow still end up with the same grade as me, who never missed a class and went above and beyond on my assignments. It seemed like they were just passing students left and right through the curriculum, and I really couldn't understand why they were doing this. I ended up calling a few other schools who were, in fact, legitimate universities, and I asked them specifically about transferring. I was told flat out that IADT was not a real school and that they would not accept any of the classes because they were not an accredited university. No one, and I mean no one, had heard of IADT. So I went back to the same advisor and asked her specifically about the accreditation. And she told me that they were accredited by ACICS, the Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools. they were not regionally accredited, which is what you need in order to transfer to a different school. And she told me at this time that you could transfer to the sister school, and I asked what good that did me if I wanted to further my education with a higher level degree. I found out later on that you actually could not transfer to one of their sister schools. So here I am at this school where I cannot transfer any of my classes to a legitimate college or even one of their schools that they own. I had never heard of anything like this in my life. It just didn't make any sense at all. So you're basically just stuck with this useless degree that you can't use for any job anywhere, and you can't transfer to another college, and you are in debt tens of thousands of dollars. Keep in mind that during this time, I had also not found a job. Before moving, I had saved up 10 grand for any emergencies and to also put towards my loans. This was also during the time that the recession hit, which made finding a job anywhere impossible. I am not kidding when I say that I applied to over 100 jobs in the area, and I did not even get a call back or an interview or anything, like nothing. I could not find a job anywhere, and it was so stressful. So I am basically living off of my savings. Eventually, I did find a job as a swim instructor for $8 an hour. This was out of town, so of course I had to pay for gas, but it was a job and I was really grateful for it. But at the same time, I was very, very broke. My meal for most days was a packet of top ramen. I would have half for lunch and half for dinner, and that was literally all that I could afford, and I was so miserable. At the same time, my roommate situation was an absolute nightmare. I had moved in with a complete stranger. We did not know each other. We were both students at the school, and they set us up with each other, and the whole living arrangement was not ideal. I felt really uncomfortable in my living situation. I was in my room a lot of the time, and now I had found out all of this stuff about the school, and I felt so helpless and so hopeless, and like I had completely wasted my time and put myself in this terrible situation, and like I had completely ruined myself financially. The apartment was also in a really bad neighborhood, and I didn't know this at the time because I wasn't familiar with the town. I should have done more research. Most definitely, but it was not uncommon to hear shots in the night and see sketchy people walking around and that sort of thing. It was just a bad situation overall. So back to the school, I continued to do my research, and I found out so many things. I can't even remember everything, but I decided that I would be leaving. I gave them the proof and demanded a refund, and they declined and said that I would need to write a letter to the president. I wrote out a 3-page letter to him explaining the situation and bringing up everything that I had found out, and I was told that I would receive a reply back in 3 days. It actually took almost a month, and when I received the letter, the president did not confront any of the issues that I brought up, but instead turned everything around on me and made up even more lies. He flat out denied my refund, saying that I was not eligible for a refund because I signed some piece of paper when I first was accepted to the school, even though my advisor had told me the complete opposite. I reached out to a lawyer, and they told me that there was absolutely nothing that I could do because either the company or the school was in some sort of protected form of bankruptcy, which explained why they were closing schools left and right, or that they had reopened under a different name. Therefore, suing them would cost a lot of money, and out of it would come nothing because I couldn't file anything against them. So here I am, out of pocket, the $10,000 that I had saved up to move up here and attend this school, on top of the $8,000 that I took out for loans for 7 months of this education that I could not use or transfer anywhere towards a degree that I would never have. I should also mention that my loans were through Sallie Mae, and I heard that At the time that I applied for the loans, the school was not even accredited whatsoever. How I even got approved for these loans without the school being accredited, without me having a co-signer and having terrible credit, I have no idea. I don't know how I was even accepted for these loans. In July of 2008, 7 months after moving up there, I decided that I would cut my losses and move back home. I had just lost so much money and I didn't want to lose any more. And on top of this, the roommate situation was getting worse and she was threatening to not give me my deposit back. I can't remember what this was for, but the school owed me some type of stipend and it was supposed to come to me on a card. I requested it 4 times and called for months on end. And to be honest, I can't even remember if I ever received it or not. I may have just given up. And then also the bonus that the advisor had promised me before I signed the papers for the school about the 4.0 bonus for my books and part of my tuition, I never received any of that. And I had a 4.0 for the entirety that I was there. I did not receive a dime. So my loans were much smaller than most people take out for school, but it still put me in a very bad financial position. I had absolutely nothing to show for the time I spent up there. It was honestly just a money pit. And thankfully I did not finish the program because then I wouldn't have a degree to show for it either. Their bachelor's degrees are equivalent to a certificate. And when you are spending that amount of money, it's just wild to me that they would take advantage of students like that. Students that were pursuing their passion and trying to make positive change in their life. After moving back and finding a job, I put almost every single penny that I earned toward my loans. And each time I paid them, I cried. To me, these loans represented not only the situation that I put myself in, my bad judgment in the circumstance, but it also represented the death of my dream. As I said, I thought that I had to have a college education in fashion design in order to be a fashion designer. The school told me that they had all of these connections and networking things, and they didn't. They lied to me about that. It made me so sad. So each time I had to pay my loan, I was reminded of that. And then finally, I paid them all off. And I cannot tell you how happy that made me. It felt like I had been chained to this, and then suddenly I was free and I could finally move on with my life. But at the same time, this also presents a problem because as time has gone on, a lot of people have seen the antics that these for-profit schools have used and how they've taken advantage of students and basically scammed them out of lots and lots of money. And a lot of these loans that the students took out from these for-profit schools were actually forgiven. However, my school was never named as one of these schools, so I did not get my loans forgiven. And since they've already been paid off and have been paid off for quite some time, I don't know if I can ever be reimbursed for those loans. To be honest, I don't think it's really fair because I got scammed by this school. And I am so happy for other people that have gotten their loans forgiven because this is not something that should have ever happened. I don't know why these schools were allowed, but in my circumstance, I was trying to do the right thing by paying off my loans. I wanted to put myself in a better position financially, and I didn't want to carry this debt with me, and I wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible so that I could start a new life for myself. But I feel like in the end, I kind of screwed myself in this situation, and I have so many emotions about this, but at the end of the day, it's already happened. It is what it is, and I am not going to dwell on it anymore because I did for a really long time, but I have moved on. This was honestly such a dark time in my life, and since I had no money and I was now in debt with these loans, I couldn't afford to go to another school. A legitimate school, an actual school that would give me a degree and the education that I was wanting. I felt so helpless and so hopeless. And I felt like I had watched my dreams being crushed, and I felt so much guilt for putting myself in that situation. I kept ruminating on it and thinking, had I not gone up there and put the money that I saved up towards a real education, I could have been somewhere else in my life. And I still think to myself, how were these schools ever allowed? How were these people allowed to create these programs that had no significance in education whatsoever, and they scammed students out of millions and millions of dollars, and the students had nothing to show for it? How was this okay? How did no one shut these schools down before then? They were everywhere. And so I know that I am not the only person that this happened to, because there were so many of these schools, and they preyed on students and their passions. They preyed on students like me that had a passion for something, that had big dreams, and a lot of them were in the artistic field. It is absolutely horrifying that they would trick young people into making such a big decision, putting them in this financial position and just basically running off with the money, approving them for these loans that many people could not pay back, and giving students a false hope for their dreams. It's not okay. They are greedy and selfish, and honestly, they don't care about anyone but themselves. Schools like this have not only put students in bad financial situations, but they have completely ruined many of their lives, because many of these students can't start over. And especially if they moved forward and pursued a degree, and then they can't get a job from that degree, and then they owe so much money to the school that they can't get an education anywhere else because they don't have money for it. It makes me so angry. And the fact that they preyed on students in the arts especially, because artists are very passionate about what they do. There is a reason that there's a saying about the starving artist. It's because a lot of artists don't care about money. They just want to be happy. They just want to do something that fulfills them on a deeper level, and they want to do something that they feel is their purpose. And I feel that that blinds a lot of people, and as a result, they will do anything they can to achieve their dream and chase their passion, and these schools prey on students like that. And it is wrong on so many levels. In the future, I hope that no one has to go through what I went through and what so many other students have gone through. And I really hope that these for-profit colleges are a thing of the past. And if you are a victim, I want you to know that this is not your fault. You are not alone in what you experienced and how you feel. Even if the situation with the school never gets resolved, there are ways that you can move on with your life and still have a happy, meaningful, and fulfilling purpose. There's honestly so much more that I could say, but I'm going to end it here because this video is already getting a little bit too long. And if you made it to the end, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I really encourage you to share this video, to like, subscribe, comment, because all of that really helps to push it out, and I think that this is a story that a lot of people can benefit from. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!